And again, expand the mind so it goes beyond ourselves, and expand the mind so it goes beyond this lifetime, and to really think in the long term about what is most beneficial for self and others. And if we do this within the context of a Buddhist worldview, it becomes evident that getting out of samsara is of foremost importance. Because as long as we're in samsara, in every single lifetime, we're going to have more problems. So future lifetimes, in some ways, will be a rerun of this lifetime. More problems in that lifetime. We'll be a different person, different situation, slightly different problems, but still, again and again, the same old thing. Birth, aging, sickness, death, getting what we don't want, not getting what we do want, getting what we want and being unsatisfied with it, being disillusioned. So all this will keep going on unless we counteract it. And the way to counteract it is by generating the wisdom that sees the reality of persons and other phenomena, that sees their lack of having any independent essence. And while it's good to aim to get out of samsara ourselves and stop this merry-go-round, which is not at all merry, we can't leave others behind. They've been too kind to us for us to ignore their welfare. And besides, our own liberation depends on them. So we can't simply use others for our own benefit, our own liberation, and then leave it at that. Say, good luck, guys. So we want to aim for highest awakening, which will enable us to really repay the kindness of others. And in repaying the kindness of others, we will also fulfill our own purpose and give true meaning to our lives. So this is important to remember every day, because if we don't, then our worldview degenerates into the usual one of my happiness now. And so a good New Year's resolution would be to remember this motivation every day and try and live our lives according to it. So today we don't have to visualize Vajrasattva absorbing into our body. Vajrasattvas are falling from the sky already on top of us, covering the earth around us, being everywhere. Yeah, so if you could count all the snowflakes, yeah, If they were all saying the mantra, whoa. Okay, so yesterday, what I talked about in the morning, you worked on the rest of the day? Or did you forget it as ASAP? And what did you come up with?
There's a lot to purify.
Yeah.
I found that going to those places where, like the uncomfortable situations, I had to work with my own aversion at kind of looking at things that I've done and just feeling almost like repulsed is a strong word, but just really not wanting to look at it and having to work with, I guess, a form of self-hatred around like why I did that, or just really uncomfortable with things that I've done, and that's stuff that I've worked on multiple times, and it's very interesting to go back again and see, wow, I need to do more work around just acceptance and purification to actually get to a level where I'm at peace, because I thought I had done some, and I think I have, but it's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah, we can really see that very clearly. And you can see that the self-hatred is a block to the purification. Okay? Self-hatred is not purification. Okay? We think in our culture that if we suffer, we are atoning for what we've done. That is a stupid idea. Yeah. Suffering does not atone for what we've done. And making ourselves suffer just isn't, another way to block remedying the situation. Do you believe me or not when I say that? Yeah? Do you believe me? Or inside, is there still a little bit, of Sunday school left? Yeah? What you learned as a little kid? That justice means you suffer or you make somebody else suffer? Yeah, this is so common in our culture. So common. Yeah. We see it in the penal system. Yeah, it's designed to make people suffer, thinking that if they suffer, they will change. And they usually change for the worse. Yeah. So punishment, doesn't work so well. There's a lack of wisdom and understanding when there's punishment. And likewise, that's what self-hatred is, isn't it? I'm going to punish myself. Okay, so, when that kind of thing comes onto your radar, look at it. Look squarely at the self-deprecation and the self-hatred. And what is this about? And what are the ideas? What am I saying to myself? How am I justifying this attitude? Yeah. Where did I learn it? Where did it come from? So really look closely at it and try and, tease it apart. Because when you can dismantle that, then self-acceptance becomes easier. But it's important to remember that self-acceptance, or acceptance of what somebody else did for that matter, doesn't mean that what we did or what the other person did is okay. It's just we're accepting that it happened. It's a reality. Yeah. We're not accepting its goodness or badness. We're just accepting that it happened. Yeah. And from there, we can go on to purify. And we can go on to improve because we're accepting the reality of the present or what happened in the past, but we're knowing that the future is open. Yeah. Remember yesterday I was saying that, we wait for New Year, but every day and actually every moment is a chance for something new. So to remember that and accept what is now and then start to change it in the next moment. And when the old junk pops up again, then you keep repeating, you keep going into it. Yeah, you keep dismantling it. Yeah, we have to remember that our wrong conceptions are pretty firmly ingrained, and we've been nourishing them since beginningless time. Yeah. So we need to put in the time and energy to change this about. Yeah. But if you do that, since cause and effect works, then your mind starts to change. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I realized that when I was doing the 35 Buddhist practice, instead of saying the names of the Buddha, I was lecturing myself about what I was purifying. And I was lucky enough to talk to Venerable Jigme about this yesterday, which was very helpful. But, old habits die hard. And it's like, I'm not even saying the Buddha's names. I'm just giving myself a lecture about what I should or shouldn't be doing and how I know it's going to turn out.
I learned quite a bit about how I've been letting myself easily off the hook about anger because I was defining it so narrowly as blowing up at somebody or yelling. And I knew that I got miffed or frustrated, but I never called it anger. So I told myself I don't really have a problem with anger. And I learned yesterday that I've just been fooling myself. There's much more there to purify.
Yeah.
There was an experience I had over the course of the summer and recently had a connection with an individual to resolve it. And so that, for me, was an incredibly profound experience of purification. After having let it fester for maybe 4 months and then coming to terms with it, partially I was curious if you could speak to the significance of repairing the relationship. That also is important for me professionally in that the wave of restorative justice that is taking place in education today is really trying to pivot away from that penal system model into one in which relationships are repaired and true ownership and understanding of the implications and the impacts of one's action are felt. And I was just curious if you could speak about that.
Well, I'm all for it. Yeah. Yeah, I've corresponded with a couple of guys in prison who are very active in restorative justice. And I've asked them a lot about that. And it's wonderful. I mean, it's really transformative. And the thing is that it needs to be facilitated by somebody who really knows what they're doing. Yeah, because a lot can come up and old habits are there. But if people can stay on track, it's really wonderful. In terms of the guys that I have written to in prison, they started out in the program and then they became the facilitators, and because they had also gone through the program and had also made big mistakes in their life, they were more credible to the other people in the program. So instead of coming outside as a goody two-shoes, they were, I'm here with you and I know what's going on. And that was quite good. I think NVC, nonviolent communication, is also geared towards restoring relationships, which is always good, if we can restore them. One thing we have to understand is that restoring a relationship doesn't mean it goes back to what it was before. Yeah, because something was wrong with what it was before, even though we thought it was wonderful. Yeah, kind of. I think you know what I'm talking about. You think, oh, you're in some relationship, this person is fantastic, and da-da-da-da-da. And then this one thing happened, and let's restore it and go back to exactly where we were before. But where we were before, something was wrong there. That situation fell apart the way it had. Yeah. And so if we can grow from learning from the situation, if the other person can grow from learning if all of us can own our own stuff, then the relationship can be restored, but it will be different than it was before. Yeah, so we shouldn't expect it to go back to exactly what it was. Yeah, it will be different, and it may be, hopefully it'll be different in a better way. You may be closer to the other person. You may not be as close as you were before. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah.
So about like karma and non-virtuous actions. I was when I was reading Shantideva's Guide to a Bodhisattva's Way of Life. There's this verse that's really inspiring, but also it confuses me in some way. On chapter 6, verse 47, he says, "Those who harm me come against me summoned by my evil karma, but they will be the ones who go to hell, and so it is myself who bring their ruin." So for me, understanding this, I think the operative word here is summoned. Like, he's not implying that his negative karma causes them to harm him through no choice of their own, because that would be like incorrect, because it would imply that they have no control over their own volitional action. But his karma is affecting them somehow. It appears to be affecting them in a way that it makes them harming him more likely. But I don't understand the dynamics of the process. How is his negative karma affecting those who harm him? How is it affecting their minds? My elementary understanding of karma is that it is associated with the arisal of a feeling after our sense consciousness makes contact with an object. So my best educated guess would be that his negative karma is causing a negative feeling to arise in others towards him and making the chance of him receiving harm at their hands more likely. But I don't know. I've been trying to, put my head around it.
Yes, this is a difficult verse to understand. Yeah. The purpose of the verse is for us to stop blaming the other person. Yeah. And to instead accept that our own actions have ramifications for ourselves. Chiefly, we experience the feeling element as a result of, happy feeling as a result of virtuous karma, negative, unpleasant feeling as a result of non-virtuous karma. But our actions also affect others. So if I did some kind of negative action towards somebody in the future, in the past, and that negative karma is in me, and the conditions come for it to ripen, then there may be somebody else in the environment who has a negative state of mind and does something to me, but it's my karma that is allowing that to happen. Because if I hadn't created that karma, that person, they may not have said that to me, or they may have said it to me, but I may not have been heard, or somehow the situation would have been quite different. Okay? But it's like, okay, by creating the negative karma, I am an open target when that karma comes to ripen. So then it's easy for somebody else who has an uncontrolled mind for their afflictions to arise in relationship to me. Okay? And so I experience at that time the result of my karma, but that karma is now gone. It's ripened. It's not going to interfere with me anymore. But the other person who is harming me is creating horrible negative karma, and they will experience the result of that in the future. So rather than be angry at that person, I should have compassion for somebody who's creating the cause of their own suffering. Okay? So this is, there's many, I've used this many times in my practice. The first time was when I was in Tibet in 1987. Yeah, must have been 87, 86. Anyway, we were on a bus riding up to the hill that Ganden Monastery is on. Ganden was one of the three big great seats of the Galu tradition, and it was outside of Lhasa. And it was really difficult for the bus to get up that hill. And yet, after the Chinese takeover of Tibet, and especially during the Cultural Revolution, many people climbed that hill, not even sitting in a bus, but deliberately climbed it using up their energy to go up there and destroy the monastery. And so you get up to the top of the hill, and, it's the buildings are crumbling because people destroyed the monastery. Not easy to destroy a monastery made of stones. They had to really put some effort into it. And so it really made me think that those people they thought they were doing something wonderfully good, by getting rid of this travesty of, ridiculous religion. But in actual fact, they were creating horrible karma. It's one of the things that, I wanted to talk about, is creating karma against the three jewels. Destroying monasteries like that, you create a horrible, horrible karma. And although they were applauded by Mao and, the whole shebang, they were basically creating the cause for their own hellish rebirths. And so I couldn't hate them. How could I hate them? Especially since a lot of them were young boys from poor areas who joined the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, in order to better their lot and help their family, and then they were ordered by the powers that be to do that. Okay, so that was one situation where you think, okay, something was going on in the dynamic that, clearly, Tibet, there was a lot of mistakes and things going on. But, just the whole idea of the people who were winning or controlling the situation were actually the people who are suffering the most and creating the cause for the most suffering. Okay? This is also how I view the present situation with Washington. You know, we created the cause to be alive at this time, to experience what is happening to the country and the environment and the world at this time. We created the cause to be here. Yeah. But when you see the people who are acting to destroy democracy, to destroy freedom, to increase racism and prejudice, you know, our initial action is to be angry at them. Yeah. But when you think the karma that they're creating, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with this whole trial in the Senate, you know, or what, you know, the election or whatever. But when you think of the karma that these people are creating, it's like, I don't want to go near that karma with a 10-foot pole. I mean, because it's creating the cause for tremendous suffering for themselves. Yeah. And you really begin to see that by harming others, we harm ourselves. So this is not only, you know, what dear Donnie and his cohorts are doing, but also what we do when we harm others. Yeah, we're actually harming ourselves. And so then, you know, instead of hating these people, having compassion for them. But remembering, compassion doesn't mean meekness. It doesn't mean you go along with things that are horrendous. It simply means that you wish people not to suffer, but we must actively engage as citizens to try and change the course of what's happening. Yeah? And, you know, take climate change seriously. Take the loss of freedom seriously. Take the rise in white supremacy seriously. And not just say, oh, compassion means that you're sweet and peaceful and you just, you don't cause waves. Yeah. You cause waves, but with a mind that's compassionate, not a mind that's angry. And because the mind is free of anger, then it's easier to develop a strategy that is going to work instead of just lashing out emotionally at whatever you think is the problem. Is this making some sense? Yeah. So, you know, I say this because in the last 3 years, a lot of people have been contacting us saying, how do I, help, help, you know. I don't want to fall into despair. And so this is the way to see it, to avoid that. Okay. It's also, if I can use this now to segue into talking about other ways to work with our mind and other ways in which we have created negative karma that we may not be aware of, is every time we see somebody doing something that seems abominable to us, you know, and when our tendency is to be angry at them. Yeah. So one technique was what I just said. See them as creating the cause for their own suffering and have compassion. Another technique is to think that we have done the exact same thing in previous lives. Yeah. That is a bit humbling. You know, it's like, what? You mean I've acted like Adolf Hitler in the past? I've acted like Joseph Stalin in the past? Yeah. I've, had the power of Mitch McConnell, and I've done that in the past. It's like we don't like to think like that. But when we look, as long as we're in samsara and our afflictions are there, then anything is possible. You put us in a bad situation, and who knows what we'll do when our afflictions arise. We like to think that, I think of, again, the occupation of Tibet. I would like to think, if I were a monk at that time and I was thrown in prison and tortured, or a nun, thrown in prison and tortured, that I would be able to keep my mind steady and practice compassion, and keep hold through it until the situation changed. But when I look at my mind, when I have even a small discomfort now, can I hold my mind steady? When somebody says something to me over some small picayune thing, can I hold my mind steady and have compassion? And then I really see the spiritual arrogance, thinking that because I've heard some teachings and have some rudimentary reflection, that I can control my own mind. And that's a joke. Who knows? If we were born in the middle of the ghetto, would we be the same people we are now? Or would we have joined gangs? If in your environment everybody's joining a gang, would we just go along with it because that's what's there and what everybody does? And have shootouts? So it's a thing of, looking and hold on, and really, letting go of that spiritual arrogance and saying, because I've been in samsara since beginning this lives, I've done that sometime in the past. I don't know if that karma has ripened yet or if that karma is still on my mind stream. But if it's still on my mind stream, I need to purify it. And even if it's ripened, I need, in the four opponent powers, I need to really emphasize the last one and make a very strong determination not to do it again. So whenever I see somebody else doing something that's abominable, not to separate myself, that I am better and higher and more spiritual than them. But, I've done the same thing. And I don't want to do this kind of action again. Now I see, because I see somebody else doing it, now I can see the problem with doing this action. But whatever seeds there are in me and whatever seeds of afflictions there are in me that could ripen and go berserky and make me act in this way, I really want to subdue those and for that reason, really put some energy into purification and to making very strong resolves not to do those actions in the future. And so in that way, if we think like that, then any situation we experience becomes Dharma practice. So whether we're arrested by the, the Taliban and thrown in their prison, or unjustly arrested in this country and thrown in prison and charged. I mean, how many people in this country are sitting in prison charged with crimes that they didn't commit? And, so to really think, to try and strengthen the mind and do some purification now, to be able to handle these situations if they come. Now, we may say, well, they're not going to come. I live, look where I am right now. There's no danger of that happening. Well, the Aryan nation headquarters used to be a 45-minute drive away. In northern Idaho going into Montana, that mountain you see out there is Idaho. It's not that far away. This is where the whole redoubt movement has taken base, of people who want to make Washington, Oregon, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana into a white Christian nation. And Matt Sia, who is a state assemblyman, is that his position? He's some elected guy in Spokane Valley. This is what he is encouraging. Yes, wow. Well, Shea, S-H-E-A. Okay, I was pronouncing the A as a separate syllable. Shea. Okay. So, maybe nothing happens, but we can't just sit back. I read a book some years ago about a woman whose family worked with, I think it was Shell Oil, some oil company. They were Chinese, lived in, I think, Shanghai, maybe Beijing. Her father was a big executive. They were rich. They had a good life. And, and okay, there was turbulence in the country, especially with the Japanese occupation during the war. But, we all think, this will change, that'll go away. No. Well, along came the Communist Revolution. The nationalists fled to Taiwan. The communists took over her family's house, put them all in prison, and she went from this high-class life into a life of poverty and imprisonment, like that. Yeah, and she was describing in the book how so many people that she met in prison died because not even from physical causes so much, but from mentally giving up. Their minds were not strong. She somehow made it through, which was truly amazing considering what she experienced. But what kind of person would we be if we were, she never expected to wind up in a prison. Yeah. I think a lot of the people who were arrested during the McCarthy era in this country, none of them thought they would wind up in prison. Yeah, we look at the McCarthy era. Can you believe that happened? For some of us, it was during our lifetime that craziness happened. How did that happen? Yeah. So, looking at things like this, it helps us really see how it's essential to practice the Dharma now, develop the antidotes now, You know, not just to deal with our little problems. They're what motivate us now. You know, oh, somebody said some rude words to me. You know, okay, let's deal with that and get over that. But how about trying to really make our mind strong, so that, you know, who knows what happens, we can hold straight. We can hold clear. And what about at the time of death? Yeah, we all think, oh yes, death is going to be nice. I'm going to, you know, lie down, and everybody's going to be around me, and all the people who were mean to me are now going to apologize as I die so sweetly with somebody holding my hand. You know, really? Do you think you're going to die that way? I find it incredibly interesting because I do a meditation practice every day where you meditate like you're going to die and go through the stages. I would say 75% of the time when I'm doing that, in the middle of the meditation, especially when I'm getting to the clear light stage, there's a noise. Yeah. The cat jumps, the something thuds, somebody knocks on the door. Yeah. The what do you call it? The tractor goes by. Yeah. So I would say really 75% of the time that happens. And and then of course I get distracted. And I say, that's telling me that when I die, don't expect it to be, silent and, very good and I can concentrate and focus. I'll probably be dying and then, who knows what's going on around me. Well, and so to try and work with our mind and develop some inner strength and consistency and positive attitude to be able to handle different things. And so it helps me to do when my mind gets upset about, somebody said this to me and that wasn't very polite. Or, they did this and it's not fair. To say, grow up, children. It's like, why are you getting upset about those kind of stupidagios? So that can be a good technique also to help your mind when you start being very picky about different things.
When you were saying about not to be so convinced that we wouldn't do certain things like Hitler or Lenin or Mao, sort of reminded me of when I was in Colombia in the 70s and I was a teenager and the guerrilla movement started in the jungles. And it seemed so appealing because of the level of injustice in the country that I really wish that I could have gone. In fact, I wanted to go. I thought it was this great thing for a girl my age to go into the jungle, take arms, and fight for justice. And I was quite, I think I was, in retrospect, I was quite fortunate that that didn't come about, that the conditions didn't allow for that to happen, because I really had created this fantasy about how wonderful that would have been. And looking back and knowing the history of the guerrillas in Colombia, the bloodshed and what they have done, and then how they themselves live and what they do to women in the guerrillas, I think I was quite fortunate that that never came to happen.
Yeah. But what's interesting is notice how that aspiration, I'm going to go and take up arms and fight for justice. Yeah, how easily that comes up. Yeah. And I mean, we see it in this country too, after 9/11, or even now, all these young men going and enlisting. Anybody who is a vet here? Any of you vets? No, two of our nuns are vets. You're a mom of a vet. Okay, yeah. So, when people enlist, again, I think it's this glorious, I'm going to fight for justice and everything, and not really aware of that they're going to come out a completely different person. Okay, so let's look at some other things that we could have done and could do, but hopefully we won't. If we look at the Bodhisattva's confession of ethical downfalls, okay? So the prayer, the recitation that begins on the top of page 62, it's called, the whole thing is called the Sutra of the Three Heaps. And it's talking about this part from 62 to, 62 and 63. Yeah, it contains three parts. One part is confession. Then there's rejoicing at our own and others' virtue. And then there's dedication of merit. So those three are contained in these 2 pages. But the confession part is the first. Yeah. So in the second paragraph on 62, the first paragraph we're calling out to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Okay, the second paragraph. In this life and throughout beginningless lives in all the realms of samsara. Whoa! This life, beginningless lifetimes in all of the different realms of samsara. If you've studied what samsara is and know the different realms, yeah, it's really vast. We have been born as, in all of those realms, as those beings. Okay? So what have we done there? Okay? We've created, caused others to create, and rejoiced at the creation of destructive karmas. And then it's going to go into a list, which I'll talk about in a minute. Okay? So we've done these actions. We've caused others to do them. We've asked other people to do that. Yeah? Sometimes we don't want to do a negative action, so we ask somebody else to do it for us. Okay? And when other people have done a negative action, whether we have asked them or not, we rejoice. So this is something to really look out for, because we tend, when we study about karma, to think about the actions we've created. But we need to think about, what have we encouraged other people to do? Yeah? Have we encouraged friends and relatives to lie on our behalf? Now you instantly may say, well, no. But, when they talk about codependence, yeah, the person who is misbehaving then asks the codependent person to cover up for them. Yeah, one partner in the marriage is totally drunk and wasted. They ask the other partner to call in sick at their work. Okay? they've asked somebody else to create negative karma. When we ask somebody else to create negative karma, we create it too. Okay? So to really think, what have we encouraged other people to do? When people have wanted to be generous, have we talked them out of it? And said, oh, yes, give an offering, but you don't need to give that much. Or, well, maybe, if you don't give that donation, then the family could use the extra money. Yeah, so don't be so generous with the family money. You see a black widow spider, and you call a family member in to come and kill it. There's all sorts of ways in which we ask other people to do non-virtue. There's other people who are criticizing us. We ask our friends to go and spread bad tales about that person who's criticizing us. So it's an interesting thing to think about in our meditation. What do we ask other people to do? Not only what do we do ourselves, but what do we ask others to do? Do we encourage them to do virtuous actions, in which case we get some of the merit? Or do we encourage them to do non-virtue, in which we create negativity and they create negativity? When I'm in Singapore and Malaysia, one of the chief questions I'm asked every visit, it is, how do I benefit my dead relatives? Yeah. And I always have to start out with saying the best way to benefit them is when they're alive. Yeah. Encourage them to do virtue. Don't ask them to do destructive actions. But people don't think about that when their friends and relatives are alive, because they're only thinking about, how can I get something good in this life? They're not thinking about karma. After their friend and relative dies, then they get concerned about, oh, well, where could they be reborn? They don't think about that when the person's alive, creating the causes for their rebirth. They think about that after they die, And when somebody's dead, yes, you can make offerings and dedicate them for that person. You can make prayers and, pujas and so on and dedicate. But the best way to help them is when they were alive, when you can encourage them to do virtue and avoid non-virtue themselves. Yeah. So don't take your friends and relatives on fishing trips. Yeah? Isn't this a favorite father-son activity? You go on a fishing trip. Yeah? But what are we really asking people to do? Yeah? On my 21st birthday, they took me out to my friends took me out to this very fancy restaurant. Yeah, which I'd never go to otherwise, where you could pick out your own lobster. The lobsters were all crawling around in the tank, and you could pick out your own lobster, which they then drop in the boiling water. Yeah? And this was supposed to be a wonderful way to celebrate your 21st birthday. Okay? So, to really, do some life review about this too. What we've asked other people to do, and even now what we encourage people to do. Okay, So I've created, caused others to create, and rejoiced in the creation of destructive karma. So when other people have acted in harmful ways, doesn't matter whether we've asked them or not, we rejoiced. Oh, good, you know? And you can, oh, it's horrible. I mean, you can see in your own mind, sometimes the thought arises. I don't want to even tell you what arises in my mind. Although maybe you've had the same one. You have? Yeah. And, you know, to even stop that thought, even though it hasn't happened, but just to even stop it, recognize it and say, no, I don't want to think like that. But then it's very easy when you read the news or listen to the news and you hear somebody who you don't like having trouble to go, I'm so glad, you know, they're having problems. Or, you know, I'm so glad that somebody's harming them. Yeah. So this, we have to be careful here. It doesn't mean that every time we rejoice at something that's happened in the news, that we're, you know, rejoicing at negative karma. Yeah, we could be rejoicing at finally something good happened. Okay, but to watch how easy it is to rejoice at somebody else's negative karma. Yeah, or to rejoice when something horrible happens to a politician that we think is ruining the country, or, you know, who knows what. Or even, you know, we hear stories about things that have happened to people we know, old high school friends who we didn't like in high school, and then we hear they got cancer, you know, or that we hear that they had a traffic accident or something happened to them. And how easy it is to rejoice in others' misfortune and to rejoice in others' negative actions. And so to really watch when that comes in the mind and hold back from it, because we don't want to, you know, what kind of people are we when we rejoice in somebody else's misery? Not too good, is it? Okay. So, like I said, there's a difference between rejoicing in somebody's misery and rejoicing that something good happened, even though somebody else may be miserable by it happening. Let me give you an example. Okay, this is just came today. You may remember that after Sandy Hook, that Alex Jones of InfoWars started saying that the whole thing was a hoax, that it didn't happen, that the parents were crisis actors, that it was a plot by the government to take away people's guns. And he said all this horrible stuff. And these poor parents, you know, are suffering so much from, you know, they're little kids, 5 and 6 and 7-year-old kids getting gunned down. So one of the parents filed a suit for, what is it called? Libel against Alex Jones for InfoWars for spreading these kind of lies. And the judge just said that Jones had to pay $100,000 of the legal costs of that family that sued for libel. So I thought, good, you know. So not because I want Alex Jones to suffer, but because this is a way of stopping, hopefully in the future, these websites that produce conspiracy theories that torture other people. Okay? So you see the difference? It wasn't like, oh good, I'm glad they, got Alex Jones. I hope he, goes to debtor's prison back in ancient England. It wasn't like that. But it was like, oh, what a relief. There's still, something that can be done about these kinds of things. Okay? So there's a difference. Mm-hmm. But we should really take care with what we rejoice at. Mm-hmm. Even especially, you may have sibling rivalry, and one of your siblings gets fired, and you're going, yeah. We kind of rejoice, but, do we really want to be the kind of person that rejoices at others' misfortune? I don't think so. Okay, so these are things really to do some kind of reflection on and look at in our own lives. Okay, so what kind of things have we done? So they're giving some examples. Okay, misusing offerings to holy objects. Now, what in the world does that mean? Okay, it means, somebody offers, and this happens in Asia much more than in the West, somebody offers a golden necklace to the Buddha. Yeah? And we misuse the offering. We might steal it by just taking it off the altar. Yeah, maybe we're just walking in the temple, or maybe we belong to that place and there's a gold necklace and we take it. Or, even the community decides together, it's not really so good to leave a gold necklace on the altar, they take it off, which is okay, and then without checking with the donor, sell it and use the money to buy some kitchen appliances, okay, or to get just to spend it on some practical kind of thing. Okay, so why is that misuse of an object? Well, the donor offered it to the Buddha out of faith and respect. So even if it's not safe to keep the gold necklace there, you can sell it. The community can gather together and make a decision to sell it. But the money should be used for something for the Buddha, not something that benefits us in an ordinary way. Okay? So, for example, getting new cloth, redoing the altar, buying another statue. It should be used in some way in accord with the Buddha because it was offered to the Buddha. Okay? If you know who the donor was, then the community should contact the donor and say, you offered this, it's a wonderful offering, you created so much merit, but we don't want to leave a gold necklace on the altar, it's too dangerous. Yeah, is it okay with you if we sell it and we use it for something for the Buddha? Or if the community doesn't want to use it for the Buddha, call the donor and ask them, well, can we use it for covers for the Dharma texts, something that benefits the Dharma, okay? Or if you really want to change the purpose, can we use it for kitchen equipment? But I would really make that request as only the last thing. Try and do something for the 3 jewels with it. Okay?
What is if there's a desperate situation and monastics face a fame or something or war and they don't have enough food but something like that jewelry is left for the Buddha?
What you do then, you can ask the donor, or what you do is you sell it. You keep that amount in your books as money belonging to the Buddha. And then the Sangha borrows that money to handle an emergency and then pays it back to the Buddha later. Yeah. Okay, so one of the things is misusing offerings to holy objects. Another, okay, so yeah, just things that have been offered, taking for your own use. I tease people in Singapore a lot. It's teasing, but it's also serious. Because I notice when people come to the temple, like on a Sunday morning, they bring lots of food offerings and they put them on the altar. And then after they do their prayers, it's lunchtime. And that just happens to be the time they think that it's best to take the food off the altar and share it with everybody. Okay? So I say, did you really offer it to the Buddha, or did you just put it there before you decide to eat it, before it's time for you to eat it? Okay? So, not to just say, oh, well, that banana looks really good, and take it. Or, just take it when it's time for you to be hungry, as part of your official duties of taking care of the altar. No, but, those things, they're taken down at the end of the day. They can be distributed or you can eat them. But it's, you take them down, you've actually offered them, and they belong to the Buddha, and then you take them down as a custodian and manager of things offered to the Buddha. Okay, so misusing offerings to holy objects. Misusing offerings to the Sangha. This one is even easier to do. So here the Sangha refers not only to the Arya Sangha that's represented by various statues, but it means the Sangha community too. So it means, when food is put out, then everybody can help themselves. But in the kitchen, unless you have special permission, you can't go in the kitchen and take food. If you do, it's stealing from the Sangha. Okay? If you're a kitchen manager and you see that there's not enough of some really special treat to go around to everybody, for everybody to get one, then you decide that you'll just eat them rather than there be a shortfall, by putting them out. Yeah. So what I'm doing, it sounds very gross, but it's very easy when you're a kitchen manager to think like that. Oh, here's something. It's really good. It's just the stuff I like. There's not enough for everybody, and yet we have to use this. And I'm working in the kitchen, so I deserve a special treat anyway. Okay, that becomes stealing from the Sangha. Mm-hmm. So, similar with using things that are out. if there's soap or hand lotion or what, and that's out, everybody can use it. Yeah, but you can't, unless it's a general thing among even the people resident there, that you can, you need a supply, you can go and get it yourself. We have that kind of agreement here. But if somebody who's a guest says, oh, I need some hand lotion, I know where it's stored in the storage room, and just goes and gets it and then uses it and takes it home, that becomes stealing from the Sangha. Okay? So it's very easy to do. And even giving food that has been offered to the Sangha, giving it to our friends and relatives, yeah, that's misusing offerings to the Sangha. Here at the Abbey, we have made general agreements that anybody who comes here, we offer them food and drink, so that nobody is, there's no stealing from the Sangha when we do that. But not every temple has that kind of policy, so you have to be careful. We also have the kind of thing that if somebody is sick or injured, we use supplies that have been offered to the Sangha to help that person if they're guests. We don't say, oh, sorry, those Band-Aids are only for the Sangha. Yeah, we got to drive into town and get different Band-Aids for you. No, we have a general understanding. We also have an understanding that when we have surplus of certain food, that we offer it to the food banks. Or, for example, what just happened, the Youth Emergency Service had a Christmas party for the at-risk teens, and so we supplied humongous amounts of spaghetti that we gave to the kids. So that thing, I think, is really, we have that kind of policy that we've spoken about before, that we just do that as part of our community being generous. But if somebody went into the kitchen as an individual and said, oh, here's this food and my friend came and they like this food, so I'm going to take it from the kitchen and give it to my friend, that's stealing from the Sangha. Okay? Or going in the kitchen yourself and taking something that hasn't been offered if you don't have permission. Okay? So it's actually quite easy to do. Mm-hmm. Or, with just little things lying around, or, So it's always good to ask. Okay. So let's pause here, because it's time to stop. I think there's enough to think about. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What is the difference between the two confessions? There's the confession that we're reading, and then the general confession that follows it?
Oh, not much. The general confession that follows it talks specifically about breaking or transgressing bodhisattva and tantric precepts. So it mentions that specifically. This one doesn't. But, many of the things that you're confessing and who you're confessing to is the same. Yeah.
Both appropriate for lay practitioners? There's no difference in audience or anything?
Yeah, everybody can say that. Everybody should say these confession verses. Yeah, very helpful.